Excellent. Thank you very much, Kim. And thank you to all of you for joining us today for this a webinar or open day, virtual open day for the manufacturing and commercialization of stem cell and gene therapies, MSc. It's great to have all of you join us. I'm delighted to be able to present and give you an overview of the program, and I'll be more than happy to take questions afterwards as well, if you have any questions that relate to the program, or as Kim said, maybe related more broadly to the field as a whole. So I'm just going to share some slides. Bear with me one second. So Kim, this is where I'm going to ask you again, if you can see my slides.
Sorry, just a moment to unmute. Yes, they can. I can see those clearly. That's great.
Fantastic. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm delighted to be able to join you for this. And really, for me, it's to give you some perspective and overview of what the program is focused on. So obviously, some of the things around modules and so on and so forth. But also, I would say from our side, when we were designing this program, the things that we really focused on and we really wanted to ensure came through in the delivery of the program. So things that we were really keen to ensure we could offer and support, in addition to things that would make this stand out compared to other programs which may be similar in nature, and why we feel this is a very, very strong program. So I should briefly introduce myself. My name is Dr. Qasim Rafiq. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Biochemical Engineering at UCL. And I've been at UCL as an associate professor now for about 4 years, coming up to 4 years. But really, for me, it's something that started about 15 years ago for me, because I was an undergraduate student within the department. I graduated with a master's in engineering in biochemical engineering in 2008. So I've had I developed and grew within the department, then left to do my PhD and got my first academic position elsewhere, and then came back to lead on the research and teaching aspects associated with advanced therapies or stem cell and gene therapies and their manufacture. And really, this MSc is a culmination of that journey in many respects. So I'm the program director for the actual program, and one of the things I wanted is kind of give you an overview of our journey as we were designing this particular program. So for those of you that joined us last week we had a taster lecture which focused on stem cell and gene therapies, or was an introduction to cell and gene therapy. Some of the initial slides might be similar, but I think it's important because this provides the context for why we're doing what we're doing and why we're developing this program. So the first question we wanted to address when we were designing this program is, what's the need for this program? Why are we doing it? Is there actually any value in doing this? And when we looked at all of the programs around the UK that could support the cell and gene therapy area, we realized none of them really focused on manufacturing. There were lots that went heavily into biology. So you'll see lots of programs that focus on stem cell biology or regenerative medicine, or maybe even gene therapy biology. But there was nothing that was available to address manufacturing and commercialization. And that's very important because we engage extensively with industry. And industry has always said to us, this is a growing area, and we see it's a growing area. And they say, we want to kind of expand our company, but we can't find the right graduates or the right recruits who can fill key positions within our companies. So that was one reason, to kind of ensure that we were addressing the skills gap that existed within the sector. But secondly, I think more importantly, is the opportunity that these therapies provide. So these are therapies which are revolutionary in nature, which we'll come into a bit later. These are therapies which are curative. These are therapies which have the opportunity to address previous unmet need. But one of the things holding back these therapies getting to the market is that patients patients aren't receiving these therapies, in partly because there aren't enough people involved in this sector who have the right expertise, who have the right know-how, who can address some of the challenges that we face within the sector. And that's what this course was really designed to do. So on the one hand, we have a clinically pulled high value manufacturing activity. High value manufacturing is effectively is a fancy way of saying that this is an area where there is a significant amount of expertise and knowledge that is required in terms of manufacturing these therapies. It's not like manufacturing, you know, a toy or even now perhaps even an engine part, because engine parts are now somewhat to some extent standardized, but this is now manufacturing living organisms. And secondly, to look and try and ensure that we could address some of the key challenges that the sector is facing, whilst taking into account things like cost of goods and so on. And cost, I think, is very important. So these are 4 groundbreaking therapies, which in many respects are kind of the first wave of cell and gene therapies. So we've got Prochymal, which is a mesenchymal stem cell therapy used to treat acute graft versus host disease. We have Kymriah, which is a CAR T therapy, and we'll come on to CAR T in just a second. We have Glybera, which is or was the first $1 million drug. And we also have Proved, which is used to treat prostate cancer. Now, these are all revolutionary therapies in that they were addressing a previous either unmet need or doing it in a novel way and having a significant outcome. But the scary thing about this slide for me are the numbers underneath. The fact that these therapies, the cheapest is $93,000 and the most expensive is $1 million. The fact that these therapies are wildly expensive means that they're not globally accessible. Many patients, even in developed countries, let alone developing countries, are not able to benefit from these types of therapies. And so fundamentally in this sector, there are 2 main questions that we're now looking to address. Firstly, how can we reduce the cost of these therapies? And the second question is, how can we increase the global accessibility to these therapies? We're starting to understand the science is being proven, but we need to start thinking about how we can make these therapies better, how we can make them faster, and also how we can make them cheaper. And this is actually, when you look at the challenges the sector faces, this was a speech given by the US FDA, so the Food and Drug Administration, one of the regulator for medicines in the US, a speech given by the then Commissioner Gottlieb of the FDA back in 2018, when looking at this sector, highlighted that there was one major challenge. So in his speech, he highlighted that the greater challenge is the limitation in manufacturing capability for both cell and gene therapies, and that fundamentally there needs to be a focus on scalable manufacturing processes that provide or ensure that we retain the inherent quality attributes. And so as I mentioned, going back to what I mentioned at the beginning, why we set up this program, the focus was very much on addressing the industry need and the global skills shortage. So this report, the Advanced Therapies Manufacturing Action Plan, was a report that was sent to the UK government, which the UK government took on board and made some policy changes. And at the heart of that program, or at the heart of the report, it highlighted that there was a critical skills shortage that limits the UK's ability to capture significant market share in this emerging industry. And that what we wanted to do was develop this master's program to align with that goal. So to align with the goal of closing the skills gap and supporting the industrial strategy. What we want to do is make sure we develop the right graduates with the right knowledge, with the right skills that can go into the right jobs at the end of the program. Some of you who may take this program may want to continue and do research, and we've got a fantastic research opportunity around manufacturing and translation, but many of you will want to go into industry, and therefore having those industry jobs afterwards is critical to ensuring that we can deliver one of the stated goals of this master's program, which is to get people into the right jobs, into the right companies at the end of this program. So what I want to do, and again, apologies for those of you that joined us for the taster lecture last week, but I think I gave an apology back then because there may have been students who had seen this even back then, but I like to show this video, even if people have seen it. I've seen it now countless times, and Kim, who's also on the line, has also seen it on multiple occasions, but for me, it really drives the fundamental reason why we do what we do. So I want to give the context to the story. So I'm going to show a short video of no more than about 3 minutes. And for me, this summarizes and epitomizes why we do what we do. So this was an individual, a young patient named Emily Whitehead, who had leukemia, so acute lymphoblastic leukemia, so blood cancer. The usual treatment for blood cancer in young pediatric patients like Emily is to have a bone marrow transplant. Emily had a bone marrow transplant, but it failed. The next line of treatment is to then have multiple rounds of chemotherapy. So I think Emily had 3 or 4 rounds of chemotherapy, but after each round of chemotherapy, they noticed the cancer was coming back. And effectively, there was no other treatment option. She was going to die of her disease because all other treatment options had failed. But at the time, at the University of Pennsylvania, where this clinical trial was taking place, they were trying this revolutionary, what we would now call a gene-modified cell therapy, called a CAR-T therapy. It was still in the clinical trial phase at this point, and Emily was enrolled onto this program. So as I mentioned, I like to show that video, and if you do decide to take the program, I will show that video on the first day again, and I make no apologies for it, because for me, it really, as I stressed earlier, it shows you why we do what we do. There is real human impact as a result of the work that we're doing. So that was work that was led by Professor Carl June and his team at University of Pennsylvania. That product, which is now a CAR-T product, is now available to patients both in the UK, in Europe, and also abroad. But that treatment option costs $400,000. And so it's limited in terms of the number of patients that can benefit given the cost of the therapy. And one of our key focuses, both from a research perspective, but also in terms of what we want to train our students in, is to understand how we can bring down those costs. How can we make the manufacturing process more effective and more efficient? Whenever I show this video as well, and again, those of you that were here last week will have seen this as well. I like to show this because it shows you Emily's story and Emily's character. So Emily had the opportunity when she got better to visit the White House to meet the then president of the US, President Barack Obama, and she couldn't tell anyone where she was going on the day. So she was asked by the president, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And her kind of strength of character, instead of asking for anything she could have wanted, she said, "Yeah, there is one thing actually. My school don't know I'm here today. So if you could write me a note just to let them know that I was with you and I wasn't just skipping school, that would be great." And there's a note there from President Obama. So now moving specifically on to the actual MSc program itself. So as I mentioned, it's the MSc in Manufacturing and Commercialization of Stem Cell and Gene Therapies. It's a long title and very much a mouthful, but it's designed to be so because it captures at the heart and the essence of what the program is focused on. And we deliberately designed it like this as well, so that when employers look at what master's program you've done, they can see exactly just from the title, it's got all the information there and it's very specific. The other key things to kind of highlight, we were actually awarded £250,000 by the UK government to set up this program because we could demonstrate and argue the need for such a program and the fact that it's addressing these skills shortages. We actually awarded a grant to actually start this program as well, which kind of shows you how much demand and how much need there was for such a program. It's gone through obviously all the approval processes at UCL, and it will begin, the first cohort will begin this September, and we have applications which are open for this year's cohort in September 2020. I believe the application deadline is sometime in July, but Kim can maybe confirm a bit later. The other thing to mention with this program, for those of you that are maybe thinking of applying in the future, is that UCL is developing a £400 million campus in East London at the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. So there'll be a brand new campus right next to the Olympic Swimming Centre and the cycling arena. And as part of the UCL East campus, this program, given that it's kind of one of the revolutionary programs that UCL will be offering in the coming years, will directly move and transition fully to the new UCL East campus, and will make use of all the new lab facilities there, as well as all of the new teaching facilities there as well. So what is the program vision? So as I said to you, we were designing this program, and what we wanted to do was make sure everything was brand new. We weren't using old modules. Sometimes you get master's programs which are created at universities, and they just pull together a module from that program, maybe a module from an undergraduate program, and they kind of pull things together and try and, show this as a master's course. We decided that actually, given that our program vision is to develop a 1-year full-time program with the aim of developing the next generation of engineers, scientists, and business professionals who have this translational mindset to address the challenges the industry faced, it had to be a brand new course that had, brand new content designed specifically with this in mind and working with industry to develop this content. So the program is aimed at enabling, enhancing, and empowering 2 types of future leaders. The first being scientific and manufacturing leaders, and the second being the technology and the business leaders. So what we really want to try and do is make sure that it's not just focused exclusively on the science. There's a big focus clearly on the manufacturing aspects as well, but we also want to train up the future business leaders in this field. So those who might be involved in investment companies or looking at appraising and analyzing cell and gene therapy companies for investment or developing new technologies. So we want to try and ensure that the leaders that we're developing are relevant for the sector, and these will be the individuals in the next 5, 10, 20 years that will be leading and moving forward this field. The other key thing I've referred to on a couple of occasions is just how this will be aligned and developed with industry in mind. And in order to achieve that, we've established an industry-led advisory board. So that's a steering committee that will help shape the content of the program to ensure it's got both the industrial and clinical relevance, to make sure it's up to date. And also those industry steering committee members have all agreed to teach a minimum of 3 lectures, either themselves individually or colleagues from their companies, to deliver material that is of the highest quality, but also very much industrially relevant, in addition to all of the academic content we're preparing and also some of the industrial academic content as well. And finally, I think I think this goes without saying, but from our perspective, we're developing and designing this course to produce graduates that are very much industry ready at the end of it, that can affect organizational change. There will be a focus on entrepreneurship, and one of the assessments you'll see focuses on delivering a Dragon's Den business case study to actual investors and people from industry. So people who are making these decisions on a regular basis, as well as looking at developing advanced managerial skills and allowing you to create and develop your own academic and industrial networks. So the program structure, and I think just to kind of reiterate, these are all brand new modules. So these are modules that have never been taught before. And I think that's very important to stress, because we didn't want to just collate, as I mentioned, different modules and kind of say, well, here's a new master's program, there's a bit on stem cells and so on. We've thought very carefully about how we structure this program. So it's 6 modules, they're all compulsory. There are no optional modules, and we've done that on purpose as well, because I think if you're coming to and you're applying to a master's program where the title is so long, the manufacturing commercialization of stem cell and gene therapies, you probably know what you want to do. And so we wanted to avoid offering any optional modules and highlight what we think and what we believe are the fundamental key areas that you need to have strength in order to be an excellent graduate in this field. So there's 6 modules. As a master's program, there must be 180 credits that are offered. So you can see from module 1, Advanced Therapy Manufacture, that's quite a significant amount of the 180 credits. That's a 45 credit module. So that module will be split over term 1 and term 2, and that focuses exclusively on the manufacturing aspects. Module 2 is called the Commercialization, Regulation, and Ethics of Advanced Therapies. That is also quite a large module. It's 30 credits, and that's focused exclusively in term 2, and that's where we'll do things like the business plan. We'll go through the regulations involved in this sector, as well as some of the ethical issues that are important for us to consider when we're entering into this sector. The third module is focused on the preclinical and clinical analysis of advanced therapies. So looking at the clinical aspects, in addition to how we establish and develop and run things like clinical trials, how we get new therapies to the market. The fourth module is emerging tools and technologies for new medicines. We realize this is a fast-moving and a fast-paced environment, and so we want to make sure that we're capturing all of the latest tools and technologies, things like gene editing, which there were some questions about last week, but is a very much a hot topic at the moment, making sure we capture some of these things in that emerging tools and technologies module. Core practical research skills, So making sure that all students have, at the very least, a significant amount of practical research training, so they can, culture and grow T cells, culture and grow stem cells, do the analytics, understand how to set up experiments and so on. And then finally, a 60 credit module, which is usually the case for science-based master's programs, where you then have a 60 credit advanced therapy research project. So the idea is that in term 2 and term 3, and pretty much all of term 3 is dedicated to allow the students to develop the advanced therapy research project, which again will be very much industry aligned and focused on looking at addressing some of the industry challenges. So I'm not going to run through all of the details on this slide. There's a lot of information here. I'll summarize it, and then obviously there's more information on our website. But the general entry requirements to join this program is that it will require an upper second class bachelor's degree with honors in a relevant area. So that's things like life science, biotechnology, bioengineering, or really any form of engineering actually, or even business if there's a biotechnology component. And that should be from a UK university or from an approved overseas institution. If you do come with industrial experience, you are also very much encouraged to apply, and in which case the entry requirement is slightly lower, so you can actually join with a lower second class if you have industrial experience, because actually we value the industrial experience and realize people learn a huge amount when they're placed or working within industry. But again, it has to be within a relevant role within industry and within a relevant company, and there's some examples there of what we consider to be relevant. There are some English language requirements, and the English language requirement for those of you whose first language is not English is good, and there's certain criteria as to what we mean by good. And then for the actual process itself, we need a personal statement from yourselves explaining your rationale, your motivation for wanting to take this program, as well as 2 references from people who are able to comment on your ability and your suitability for the program itself. So I'm going to spend a bit of time actually on these 2 slides, or the following slides, because I think this is very important. And again, it goes back to the fundamental vision of the program. So what is the teaching style, and how are we aligning it to industry? Well, first, I think to understand what the teaching style is, it's important to understand what are traditional teaching styles. So traditional teaching styles, and these are things that we will certainly incorporate into this program. So I'm not saying we're not going to do any of this, but absolutely we'll incorporate some of this. But we want to complement it with other teaching styles as well. But many of you will be very familiar with some of these teaching styles where you have lectures, you have maybe case study-based learning. You may do lab practicals, you may do tutorials, there may be group discussions, flipped learning, where, for example, you might do the assignment beforehand and then we come to the class and we discuss, and then things like videos and webinars. And absolutely, that will be, some of our teaching will very much focus on these types of teaching styles. These are proven teaching styles and are traditional for a reason, and some of the teaching will focus along these sorts of teaching styles. But what we want to do is take advantage of the fact that we now have a wealth of knowledge on pedagogy, for example, how people learn and best practices for teaching. We also have a wealth of resources and opportunities, both online and offline, that we can make use of, and which we feel will add to the student experience. And what I like to call real-world teaching. So what we want to do is combine the traditional teaching styles with what we call real-world teaching, where we include things like a Dragon's Den business plan pitch. Because when we speak to industry, and we've spoken to them, many colleagues who are working at various levels within companies, they've always said one of the things that students sometimes lack the ability is to make the business case. And even if you're working in a company and you want to, get a new piece of equipment, or you want to undertake a new study and investigate, maybe try and look at a discovery of a new molecule, whatever it might be, there has to be a business pitch or a business plan, and identifying what the business case is. And often students who come out from universities don't have the experience in being able to do that. So one of the fundamental goals is we want to train our students to be able to make business plans, business pitches, and make the business case, and deliver that to real world dragons. For those of you that aren't common with the term dragon or Dragon's Den, this is effectively the opportunity to meet real world investors, people who will invest in your company, invest in your idea. Some of them may be senior management who need to be convinced of why they should pursue strategy A over strategy B, for example. So that's one of the things that we really want to focus on, is giving you those opportunities. The other thing I'm a big believer in, because I've seen this impact directly my career, but also career of many of my former acquaintances and current colleagues and so on and so forth, is the importance of networking. And this is, a core feature of any MBA program is the importance of network and engaging with colleagues in your sector, in the industry, in the wider community. And that's something, again, through all of our activities, we're very much focused on, is trying to ensure that you develop and build your own networks. Because when you are then looking for jobs, we want you to be in a position whereby you are familiar with the companies, you're familiar with some of the employees, you can get an idea of how things are, but also you're very much in demand. People know that you're going to be graduating from this program, or you will soon be, maybe you want to do a research degree afterwards, but you're on people's radar. That's what we want the situation to be. And also it gives you opportunity to develop new ideas and new thinking. That ties in with our third point, which is very much the industry and clinical visits. So the idea of being able to visit companies or visit clinical manufacturing sites where they're actually manufacturing these products. Again, I'm a firm believer that students in most undergraduate and master's programs never actually go to see where they might be working in the future. And I think that's a huge shame and a huge loss. And I think is the detriment of many programs. So we've committed to offering at least 3 industry or clinical site visits throughout the course of the program. And that's in spite of COVID. So obviously, we may have to adjust the timetable a little as a result of COVID-19 and delivery of the next year. However, we have remained, and our commitment to the industry and clinical site visits remain. For me, this is a core part of the program, and I've linked assessments to this because I really want the students to maximize the benefit that they get from meeting with CEOs, CTOs, CSOs of companies, as well as other employees within companies as well. So for me, that is a fundamental part. And what we're thinking is, we had some original plan in the first term, but given with COVID-19, we've decided we'll try and push those industry site visits a bit later in the year, but we still are committed to delivering those industry and clinical site visits. The other thing we're doing, and this was even before COVID was on the scene and before coronavirus had even emerged, we had negotiated with a company called Lobster to get access to and offer this to our students, which is a virtual laboratory software. It's kind of like a Netflix for laboratory and gaming simulations. So it allows you to simulate actual experiments through kind of a gamified experience. I'll show a slide in just a couple of moments, so that you can actually learn techniques and procedures virtually. And you can do this at any time, day or night. You log in, you can use it from an iPad, you can use it from your browser. So all it needs is an internet connection and some sort of browser access. And you can run through the simulations, and there's hundreds of simulations. So we have to pay quite a lot for this. But as I said, even before COVID, this is something that we were committed to offering. So if you go back to our open day material last year, from November last year, you'll see this exact same slide. And for me, I'm proud that we have this, because now I think labs are under huge demand, given that COVID is affecting many university programs. But I feel that we were ahead of the curve. We identified that this is something we want to provide, irrespective of what's happening now, because we know it will benefit and supplement our teaching activity. The other key things I'll briefly touch on as well. So we want to have an annual industry and alumni dinner. So obviously this is the first year of running this program, so there won't be any alumni, but there will be industry. So we want to ensure that we have a formal dinner later on in the year, where we invite all of our industry colleagues, and hopefully in the future we invite our alumni. And those of you that take the program this year, and in 5 years' time, you will be the alumni. So you'll be invited year on, year out to join us for that, and you can meet with the graduates, you can meet with colleagues, and you can meet with others within industry as well. And that we feel is important, that camaraderie, that kind of sense of belonging, so that beyond the program, you're still connected and you've still got the opportunity to engage with others in the field. The other things we're doing, so having coffee morning with sessions. Don't worry, we'll provide the coffee. We'll make sure there's ample tea and fruit teas and water and so on as well. It's not limited to coffee. But we want to have coffee morning sessions with experts. So you've got the opportunity to ask in face to face experts about some of the challenges they face, maybe about their careers, maybe about scenarios in their companies, ask, open things around salaries and so on and so forth. And that links into the final 2 bullet points. The idea of meeting with VCs, so venture capitalists, and key opinion leaders to get their war stories. I like this term, war stories. Everyone who is successful, or in any significant position in a company, has gone through a lot of failures. And I think it's important to understand and learn from those failures. And they're often very willing to share, but they don't have the platform to do so. So what we want to do is provide that opportunity for those individuals to go through their successes and their failures and what we call their war stories. And they can share that with our students so that our students can learn from that and realize actually people have been through a lot, but they've come out of it at the other end and they learned this from it. And that's hopefully learnings that can benefit our students. And then finally, kind of things like the AMA, so Ask Me Anything with our steering committee. And again, we've prepared our steering committee to say, look, anything means anything. So, if they're asking salaries, we want you to be as open and honest as possible. If they're asking about working conditions, about companies and so on and so forth, we really want this to be an opportunity for our students to ask anything they would like to ask. And ultimately, again, this is all designed to create leaders of the future. So I'm going to start to wrap up and just kind of briefly touch on the last few slides. So I mentioned company and site visits. These are just some of the companies that we're looking at. So we engage very closely with Autolus, with GSK, with the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult, with companies like Sartorius, Oxford Biomedica, Exmoor, Paul Life Sciences, and a host of other 30, 40, 50 companies. So there's a range of companies that we're engaging with. And the idea is that when we organize these site visits, there will be no additional cost. We will cover the travel costs associated with getting to the various sites, so that it's as easy for our students to attend this as possible. But also, I'm very keen that our students go to conferences and actually visit non-cell and gene therapy manufacturing companies. So companies like Jaguar Land Rover, who organize a site tour. Because I think that's very important. Although Jaguar Land Rover, they clearly don't make cell and gene therapies or any therapeutics for that matter, they do make advanced precision tools such as engines, such as cars, such as automobiles. And I think that's critical to understand how other manufacturing sectors have developed and evolved, and to actually see their facilities. And some of those ideas may permeate and inform your thinking moving forward. So this just gives you an overview of our industry steering committee. I won't go through all of them, but this for me is the creme de la creme of industry. So these were all individuals that I contacted first. So we want a steering group of about 10. And I thought, okay, we've got our A team, which would be this 10, but a few of them might pull out and so on. So we'll have maybe others who we can then contact. But every single steering committee member I contacted, they immediately said yes. And for 2 reasons. A, they've all got a passion to support the next generation of scientists and engineers and business professionals coming into this field. But also, I think quite selfishly and understandably from their side, many of them are senior in very significant companies, and they want to recruit the best talent. So they want to meet with you and they want to see you throughout the course of the year, so that they can then hopefully put you in a position where they will offer then the best students opportunities within their companies. So they're all very keen to support this program. So I won't go through all of their details here, but we have an illustrious list, and we will be putting up profiles on the website of each of our industrial steering committee members. I did mention briefly Lobster and the program, the software we purchased. So this is virtual laboratory environment. You can view the YouTube link. Just type in Lobster on YouTube, and you can get a video of what's involved. But it's a gamified lab experience, and it allows you to learn techniques. And the idea, this isn't meant to replace the practical teaching. That will still continue. This is meant to supplement that teaching, so you can learn the techniques in advance and then get into the lab and try and recreate some of these techniques for real. So finally, why UCL for this program? Again, I showed this slide last week, but UCL in this sector, in the cell and gene therapy sector, or what's sometimes called the ATMP sector, which stands for Advanced Therapy Medicinal Products. That's a regulatory term. Within this sector, UCL is running more clinical trials than every other UK university combined. I think that just kind of highlights the leading role that UCL is playing within the sector. The other way to look at it as well, I like to when I refer to this to my students, is UCL is running more clinical trials than all of Italy and all of Netherlands. So it really is a global powerhouse. And I think globally, I think we're second or third in the world in terms of clinical trials behind the US. So for me, that really puts us in a very, very strong position. And that's reflected in kind of the role that UCL has played within the sector. So we have a significant amount of capability and capacity to manufacture these therapies and develop these therapies on site, but also you can see the innovation. So UCL has been, so FIH stands for first in human. So it's developed first in human gene therapies for ADA SCID, for CAR-19 T cells to treat leukemia with allogeneic T cells, first in human adeno-associated viruses for gene therapy for hemophilia. And also it's spun out a number of companies. And I like showing this slide, but it always reminds me I need to add some more logos. So there's actually been 2 or 3 other spin-outs, such as Quell Therapeutics, for example, which is a spin-out from King's and UCL and Hanover. So there's always additional spin-outs that are emerging from UCL, but these are companies that have spun out directly from UCL. And I can mention Purify here, which is a spin-out directly from our department at UCL as well. So I won't go into a huge amount of detail because I think I've discussed personalized cell and gene therapies, but this just gives you more news stories where UCL was involved, and these news stories relate to, and these are very recent, so from 2019 and 2020, kind of showing the work that UCL is doing. So UCL and UCL hospitals being second in the world and top in Europe for CAR-T research activity. And there's also a fantastic BBC Two documentary called War in the Blood, which kind of journeys through patients who are receiving these CAR-T therapies. I won't touch on this in any great detail, but we have a significant amount of research, and our research goes straight back into our teaching, and it's cutting edge pioneering research. So we received £10 million from the UK government. That £10 million we then use to leverage a further £10 million from companies, and a number of those companies are listed at the bottom. So we have £20 million available to manufacture, or to look at the research associated with the manufacture of these advanced therapies. And this is an opportunity for those of you who want to perhaps go into a research role afterwards. We do offer a number of engineering doctorates and research PhD opportunities that you can apply for within the sector after your master's program. We can't guarantee that you'll be offered one, but because they're very competitive, but there are normally a number of opportunities available, and the hub is just one mechanism to enable that research. So again, I won't go through much detail onto UCL, but UCL is one of the top 20 academic institutions in the world. It's ranked #1 in Europe. It's the largest biomedical research center in Europe, in that we have 7 hospitals connected to UCL, many of them specialist hospitals such as Great Ormond Street Hospital, and it's the first in the UK for research strength. The Faculty of Engineering Science, which we are a department of, is the second largest recipient of UK engineering research funding, and the Department of Biochemical Engineering is the founding and remains the only UK department dedicated to biochemical engineering. I won't go through all of biochemical engineering because you can find this information on our website, but this is an overview of the academic and the company collaborations that we have, in addition to the facilities that we can provide to our students. So we've got multi-million-pound facilities which our students will have access to undertake research, to undertake training and so on as well. I just want to wrap up with employability. So with regards to employability, graduates from this program will be in significant and high demand, and hopefully I've made the case for that. There's a critical skills shortage at the moment. In terms of the roles, there's opportunities becoming scientific or senior scientific team leaders, R&D scientists, manufacturing and management positions. And given that there'll be a focus on the commercial exposure, we also believe that there'll be lots of business development opportunities as well. And although we've never run the program before, from our undergraduate and other postgraduate programs, because again, there used to be a lot of teaching of cell and gene therapy, the graduates from those programs and from our research degrees have gone on to organizations like Autolus, GSK, Mira, Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult, and a whole range of others. So we've actually got many graduates in the field, but obviously we're just starting this program dedicated to stem cell and gene therapies now. But we have put a lot of graduates into key organizations already. So as I mentioned, there'll be a focus on developing the necessary skills, practical training, and sector-specific expertise. There will be a focus on things like GMP, good manufacturing practice, and how this applies to the clinical and commercial requirements. And as I said, reiterating that point at the end as well, this program was designed to produce graduates that are industry ready and that can affect organizational change to really make a difference in this sector. So with that, I'd like to thank you all. So I'd be more than happy to take questions now, or indeed, if you do have any questions, do feel free to reach out. The last couple of weeks have been a little busy because we're dealing with everything COVID-wise, both from a research perspective as well as looking at how we can adapt our programs and so on. But do feel free to reach out and I will get back to your emails. Thank you very much. So Kim, I don't know if you can still hear me.
Hello, yes.
So in terms of the questions, what's the best way to address this?
Well, if you like, I can read them out to you. We've got 5 here. In fact, one's in 2 parts. Somebody actually asked, so they said they'd like the opportunity to talk with someone about types of roles in this area, and then went on to say they'd find it really interesting to talk to the industry leads. I know it's something we've spoken about, maybe creating a webinar where we could involve the industry board. I'm not sure that's something whether we could do. Absolutely, actually, and that's a very good idea. Maybe, I think, we'll need to give them some notice, but absolutely, that's a fantastic idea. We can definitely get some of our industry steering committee to say, you won't hear me talking anymore, and you won't see that video again, but you will hear from our industry steering committee. So we can definitely arrange that, and I think that would be very useful. So that's an excellent idea. Sure. And there's another question here, which is, will there be the option to do a more business-focused research project, or will the projects available be strictly science research-based? Which is a good question. And that's a fantastic question. And again, absolutely. So we want to make sure that the research projects align with industry need, and are very much aligned with addressing some of the key challenges the industry faces, much of which is business or commercial orientated. So absolutely there will be a case. So one of my colleagues, Professor Susan Farid, has a huge amount of research interest in cost of goods analysis, in terms of identifying capacity for manufacturing and kind of the business and commercial considerations. So there will almost certainly be the opportunity to do a more business and maybe kind of a more kind of computer-based research project rather than a science-based growing cells, whatever it might be. But we want to try and be able to offer both, and that's something very important. Okay, we've also a question which is, what's the contact time per week, including teaching and practical? Good question. So contact time per week, it depends on the module. So all of that information should be available in the module diets and the module specifications. But effectively from memory, we're looking at about, and we've put together the timetable for the coming year. We're looking generally, so this is, some weeks may be slightly different, but generally on the whole, we're looking at probably about 2 to 4 hours a day minimum in terms of what is being offered, either teaching or practical. When it does come to the practicals, we've actually set aside quite a significant amount of time so that you're in the lab pretty much from kind of 9 or 10 in the morning until kind of 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So those days will be longer because we think it's important to familiarize yourself with the lab. But in terms of when it's kind of tutorials, case studies, seminars, discussions, sessions with industry experts and so on, then we're looking at maybe 2 to 4 hours a day over the course of a number of weeks and a number of days within that week as well. Great. Somebody's asked if this program and the undergraduate degrees are of biochemical engineering are accredited. Some are, some aren't, but I think it'd be great if you could go into detail about which ones are. Sure. So this course wouldn't be accredited. So we're looking at whether we can get accreditation from the Royal Society of Biology. But at this stage, that's not something we're pursuing because our focus is really try and focus on industry need rather than meeting accreditation requirements. However, the majority of our programs within the department, so that includes our undergraduate B-Eng and M-Eng program in biochemical engineering, as well as our biochemical engineering MSc, so we have a specific MSc in biochemical engineering, are accredited
by the Institution for Chemical Engineers, the ICHEME, which then allows you the opportunity to become a chartered scientist or chartered engineer after your graduation.
Okay, and the last question we've got is how much engineering background is needed, particularly maths?
So again, that's a good question, because I think students often get concerned with the numerical content. In this particular program, there won't be a huge focus on the mathematics. So we don't expect you to be, experts in mathematics. I think having a basic GCSE background in mathematics would be sufficient. What we do, if there are things where mathematics is required, we'll try and provide you with as much resource, but we're trying to limit that as much as possible, because this isn't designed to make you an engineer. That's not, we have dedicated engineering programs that are designed with that purpose in mind. So this isn't that type of program. Nevertheless, there may be opportunities where you are required to do some basic level GCSE type mathematics, in which case that will be required, and we'll try and make sure that students who haven't studied mathematics in a while will have that opportunity to benefit from that, and can hopefully go through that content with relevant support.
Great, okay. Well, we've got 5 minutes to go. We've got one more question left. So just before we go into this last question, I just want to let you know, in the chat box, I'm going to post a quick survey. It's only a few questions long, but it really helps us to get, if we could have your feedback. So I'm going to ask Qasim this question, and if you've got any further questions, please pop them in the Q&A box before we finish. So the last question is, will the core practical research skills module still take place in term 1 considering COVID?
Very good question, actually, and I should have amended the slide, I forgot to. So we are still committed to running that module. So that module, the core practical research skills, will absolutely still take place, because we feel that's a fundamental component of the program. Given that we are dealing with COVID this year, what we have decided to do is to actually move that module to term 2, so that it gives us as much time, because although UCL will be open from September, and we are committed to being open from September. So UCL's official position was announced, I think, a couple of weeks ago. UCL will be open in September, and where possible, we encourage all of our students who are able to join us in London at UCL to do so, because there will be activities that will be facilitated at UCL. However, we realize for many of our students who are traveling from abroad, particularly countries perhaps in the Far East or in other parts of the world where there are still quarantine restrictions in place, or they've been advised by their local governments not to travel, we don't want to exclude those students, and we want to make sure that they benefit from this as well. So particularly for the first term, we're going to try and push things around so that all of the taught content can be delivered as needed to both our students who are joining us remotely, as well as students who are joining us in person at UCL. And therefore, the core practical research teaching, obviously it's very difficult unless you have a lab at home to mimic what we're doing in person. So therefore, we've decided to move that to term 2. So it will still go ahead. We're just rearranging the timetable to accommodate the current situation that we are facing. But as UCL is committed to remaining open, we want to provide the best opportunity for our students, whether they are able to join us in person in September, or whether they're joining us remotely. We want to make sure you have the best experience, and then hopefully for those students who are joining us remotely for the first term can be with us in person for the second term and beyond.
Great, thank you very much. That's all the questions answered. So what I'm going to do is just say thanks very much, Qasim. Thank you for joining. Thank you to everyone who came along. Thank you for your questions. They were great. A recording of this will be made available afterwards. It'll probably take me a week or so to edit it, upload it onto YouTube, and share a link. So that will, if you sign up to our YouTube channel, you'll get an automatic notification when anything's published anyway. But I'll send an email around afterwards. Thank you, with a link to that. So if there are no more questions, I'm just going to hand over to Qasim to say goodbye.
Thank you very much, Matt, and once again, thank you to all of you. It's great to be able to introduce the program, and I'll be more than happy to take any questions afterwards by email. So please do contact. Like I said, at the moment it's a little busy, but I will respond to emails hopefully within a week or so, if you have any burning questions and so on. And as Kim has said, and I think one of our questions came in, could we organize a session with some of our industry steering committee? And that's a fantastic idea. It's something I will explore with them today. So I'll email all of them and see if we can get a date for sometime, realistically, I think in July, to give them as much notice as possible. I think it'd be great if we can have, you know, 1, 2, if not 3 of them join us, maybe for a discussion, and then also to take questions directly from some of our prospective students. So thank you very much, everyone, and I wish you all the best. And feel free to reach out if you have any more questions moving forward. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Bye-bye.